Hi, I'm Richard Schwartz, President Emeritus of Jewish Veg, and author of this book, Vegan Revolution, Saving Our World, Revitalizing Judaism. And this is one of a series of podcasts I'm doing, interviewing key environmentalists, animal rights activists, vegans, vegetarians. And in this program, we have really a super special guest, Salish Rao. And among other things, he's promised a granddaughter that will have a mainly vegan world by 2026. And he's really one of the leading experts on the importance of averting a climate catastrophe and stressing that it's essential there'll be a shift away from animal-based diets in order to do that. So welcome to the podcast, Salish.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So I want to start by just getting a little background. How did you get involved so that now you're one of the leading vegan activists and experts on the importance of averting a climate catastrophe? What's your history on that?
Well, I'm a systems engineer by profession. So I used to work on the internet back in the 90s. I got my PhD in the Information Systems Laboratory from Stanford University. It's basically electrical systems, but systems are systems, So I know that when I finished my PhD, I went to my advisor and I said, is this what a PhD is all about? I just took one problem and beat it to death. And he said, no, that's not why I gave you a PhD. I gave you a PhD because you have the capacity to take any problem in any field and make a credible contribution to it. And by making that statement, he changed my life, literally, because I now had the confidence that I could take any problem in any field and address it. And so that sort of was the background. And I was working on the internet. I was responsible for making the internet go from mainly analog to a digital version. And that's the digital communications that I'm actually using on my laptop today. And then in 2005, I happened to see Vice President Al Gore's presentation on TV. This was before his movie had come out. And I was so shocked. I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I'm wasting my time working on making the internet even 10 times faster. And she said, if you think it's that important, why don't you look into it? So that's how I got started. And within a few months, I went to her and I said, it's far worse than what he's saying. So we have to close our company and focus on this full time. And she agreed, and so we closed our company. We had to find everybody jobs. We had about 8 employees in our company at that time. And then I wrote to Mr. Gore and I said, how can I help you? And that's how I got involved. I got trained by him in 2006. And during the training, I asked him a question about animal agriculture. And he didn't want to answer it. So I realized that there was something that they don't want to talk about, So I started Climate Healers in 2007, which is the idea behind Climate Healers is how do you reverse climate change? How do you heal the climate? Because, I noticed that the mainstream discourse was all about how do you maintain the fever? How do you not let the fever go over 2 degrees Celsius? I mean, to me, if I have a fever and I go to a doctor, and the doctor says, oh, I'll make sure your fever doesn't go over 2 degrees Celsius, I would think this doctor is incompetent. He should be reversing my fever, right? And so that's why I thought there is a place for the kind of work I can do, which is how do you do a systems engineering for healing the climate? And very soon you realize when you work on that topic that you need to go vegan. You need to create a world that's based on veganism, and that actually animal agriculture is the absolute leading cause of what's happening to the planet. And mainstream people don't want to talk about it.
Okay, very interesting. His wife was very wise in agreeing that you should get involved in this, and glad she did, and that you were involved with Al Gore. And it's a shame that. So I think heard that he has moved towards veganism. He's not speaking out about it.
Yeah, he's not speaking out about it. He may be vegan. I think his training is now all vegan. So he's sort of hinting to people that you have to go vegan, but there is nothing in his slide deck about veganism, So he's just, at least the last time I looked. And so it is, to me, it's a complete, it's a wasted opportunity, because you have so many people who are interested, who want to work on climate change. And we need to get them on board with veganism,
Well, I agree, of course, with you 100% on that. So can you tell us a little bit about this Thomas, your granddaughter, what exactly is involved in that, and how do you think it's going? Is it progressing toward your goal as much as you'd like it to be?
Right. So, as a systems engineer, I look at leading indicators as to know how soon we have to make this transformation happen. What we need to do is fairly obvious. Okay, you have to go from a animal-based resource extraction economy to a plant-based ecosystem restoration economy. Okay, and social justice is part of that, because the current animal-based resource extraction economy is fundamentally unjust, right? Because there is hierarchies built. And so when you create a plant-based vegan economy that is about restoring the ecosystems of the planet, you can make it socially just as well. Okay, so that I knew what we need to do, but I was looking at how fast we have to do it. And for that, I was looking at leading indicators. And the leading indicator in this case happens to be the loss of biodiversity, the loss of wild animals. We are killing them at such a fast pace. Between 1970 and 2010, we had killed off 52% of all wild vertebrates by total weight.
Okay. Killed 50% of what?
52% of all wild animals by total weight, So that's in 40 years, we killed off more than half. And when that result came out, it takes 4 years for the World Wildlife Fund to compile its results. And so the result came out in 2014. And when that result came out, I did an extrapolation, assuming that we are killing wild animals proportional to the size of our economy, that it's proportional to the GDP. And I assume that the GDP will keep growing at the current rate. I think it was 1.5% per year or something like that. And so then I calculated that we are on track to wipe out 100% of all wild animals by 2026. That's how fast it would go off. And I was shocked. I thought, my God, if this is true, why isn't everybody screaming about this and saying, stop the killing machine? And then I thought maybe my calculations are wrong because I was using a simple model, right? Just proportional to the size of the economy. So I thought I would wait until the next report comes out. And that came out in 2016. And it said that between 1970 and 2012, 58% of all wild animals disappeared. So it went from 52 to 58 in 2 years. And at that rate, even a linear extrapolation brings you to 100% by 2026. So I realized my calculations were correct. And that evening, I was reading a story to my granddaughter in bed. And at the end of the story, she put her head on my shoulder and she said, "Grandpa, who were the first human beings?" And I have promised her that I'll never, ever lie to her. I'll always tell her the truth. So I was racking my brains trying to figure out how to tell her about evolution, how evolution works. So I told her, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mother by your hand, and you ask your mother to bring her mother to stand by her side, and so on. So you create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother, and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they will merge because both lines are going to say, "Hey, that's my mama too." Immediately, she just sat up in bed. She said, "What? Are you telling me that animals are my family?" And I said, now that you put it that way, they are your family. Because honestly, I hadn't put it together like that. And I just knew the theory of evolution. For her, animals being family became visceral. And she was only 5 years old at that time. Okay. So then she started bawling. She started crying. She said, Grandpa, make them stop. They're all eating my family. And she started naming names of people she knows who are eating her family. Okay. And I realized I had created a world full of monsters for my granddaughter by trying to tell her the truth. So my heart was being wrenched out of my chest listening to her bawl. And I was trying to console her, and I wanted her to stop crying. So I told her, Kimaya, this is what I do. It's my job to make them stop. So please stop crying. Immediately she stopped crying and she looked at me wide-eyed. She said, this is your job? This is your job? You know you haven't done your job? And she shook her finger in my face and said, do your job. And then she said, when will you do your job? And I blurted out, I better do it by 2026, otherwise we're all in big trouble. She said, will you promise me that? I said, okay, I'll promise you that. And she said, will you give me a pinky promise? I said, okay, I'll give you a pinky promise. And I had no idea what it meant. And she said, hold out your pinky. And then she locked her pinky in mine. And then she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. And then she put her head on my shoulder and went to sleep. And I couldn't sleep because I realized I'd made a very serious promise to a little girl on behalf of my generation. And I thought, who am I to make this promise? And I'm just an engineer studying this problem. But then I dozed off. And finally, when I woke up in the next morning, I realized it is my job. In fact, in any engineering project, and to me, climate healing is an engineering project, it's the systems engineer who gets involved first, who figures out whether the problem is feasible, whether the solution is feasible, and then figures out a model for how do you implement the solution, and then gets people on board, the engineering team on board, to take up pieces of the solution and implement it. Okay? First, agree with me that the solution is what they want to implement, and then implement it. So that's how engineering projects work. And we have done this so many times as humanity. I'm talking to you over a computer that involved millions of people to build, right? And it was a collaborative project. We weren't fighting with each other. We went, in an engineering team, you don't say, I have a secret from you. I'm not going to tell you this secret and all this nonsense. It's an entirely different system. It's a collaborative system you have to build. Okay. You have to create that. And so I looked at feasibility first. Is it feasible that we have a vegan world by 2026? And I said, of course it's feasible. You feed them this, you eat this instead of that, you wear this instead of that, it's feasible to have a vegan world. So once you know it's feasible, then it's a matter of how do you get there? How do you create a system like that? And that's what I've been working on,
By the way, do you think it makes it far more feasible, the fact that there are now such an abundance of plant-based substitutes, they say, that have the appearance, texture, and taste so close to the meat and the other animal products? Now they're working on cultured meat, for themselves, and that's not really vegan, but it would sharply reduce the harm to animals, and it would reduce the environmental impact. So would all that help? Because now, one argument is so hard to answer. People say, I know animals are mistreated, I know environmental effects and all that, but I just can't give up the taste. Now they can get that same taste without the killing of animals. So
right.
That's into helping making it more feasible.
Yeah, it's all the excuses are coming off. Basically, there are no excuses anymore not to do it. And the only excuse you can say is, I really want to kill the planet. What is that? That's not an excuse. Because you're living in a common space with all of us. And I don't want my planet to be killed. I don't want my granddaughter to have a destroyed planet. And so it's up to us to realize that this is actually far worse than even secondhand smoking. Okay, this is secondhand destruction of the planet. And no one really, has a birthright to do that, right? So I think it is going to become inevitable the longer we wait, and the more nature is now sending us strong signals every year, and it's getting stronger and stronger. So I think it's absolutely inevitable. When I say that in any engineering project that I have undertaken, in my mind, the problem was solved. The deadline is there and the problem has been solved. And then I work my way backwards to say, how do I get there, right? That's how engineering works. And if, as a systems engineer who's working on this project, if I tell my people, I don't know if it's going to work or not, no one is going to follow me. No one is going to be on my project, right? No, I have to know that the project can be done and it will be done. And with that confidence, people come along with you.
Now,
And so I say, in my mind, it's already a vegan world in 2026.
oh, wonderful. Well, you're great optimist, and I'm going to be right with you working on this. This is the most critical problem facing the world. If we don't solve it, everything else will be rather minor. Now, you have written a very important published paper, which argues that animal-based agriculture is the main cause of climate change. Can you explain why are you saying that animal-based agriculture is the main cause of climate change?
Well, yeah, the paper I wrote is basically a systems engineering analysis of climate science. And, any project I undertake, I first look at the underlying theory, the problem, and then I figure out what is the solution space. And in this case, the solution space clearly says, go vegan as quickly as possible. Okay. There is nothing that does not improve when you shut down the killing machine on the planet. So I sort of created I took all human activities and I put it into two categories, the burning machine and the killing machine. And with that, I was able to look at how do you turn off these two machines? What is the right order in which you need to switch them off? And it turned out the killing machine has to be turned off as quickly as possible. Okay, that's what the model is saying. And the reason this is the case is because of the enormous land use for growing animal foods. 43% of the land area of the planet is used to either graze animals or to grow crops to feed them. Okay? And especially the grazing lands are completely devoid of carbon. So we did I worked with the University of Illinois Integrated Science Assessment Model, which had a breakdown of all the carbon dioxide on land. Carbon dioxide, there is 3 times as much carbon dioxide on land as there is in the atmosphere. Okay, so land, vegetation, and soil stores 3 times as much CO2. And on that land, the grazing land is only storing 2% of the land carbon, even though it is 37% of the land area of the planet. Why? Because all the trees have been chopped off. Most of them have been chopped off. And anything new that's growing on that grazing land is being chopped off and burnt every year. These are called pasture maintenance fires because the animals do not eat them. So the motivation for human beings is to only grow things that the animals eat. So everything else is a waste, so to speak. So they become fertilizer for the next year's crop of animal feed. So by doing that, we have kept the grazing lands at an artificially low level of carbon sequestration. So only 2% of the land carbon is on 37% of the land area of the planet. So then I asked the question, if we just restore the forests on that land that used to be there, nothing new, you have to bring back the forest that used to be there, how much extra CO2 can we store? And it turned out that with just 41% of the land used to be forests in 1800. The rest of the grazing lands were deforested before 1800. So we don't know what kind of forest biomes were there. But in that 41% of the land, if you just bring back the original forest that used to be there, you can literally reverse climate change, right? And it was a stark result. No one can dispute it because all we did was we took grids that were grazing grids and replaced them with forest grids and we added up the numbers, okay? So when I presented that at the American Geophysical Union fall meeting in 2015, we had a joint paper with Professor Atul Jain of the University of Illinois and his student, Shiji Shu. And when we presented that, everyone said, yeah, you're right, but it will never happen because people will never give up their meat. And I said, you mean in a matter of life and death, you're going to say, I'd rather die and kill everyone off than give up my meat? I mean, what is this? Of course it will happen. Okay, to me, it was, once you show human beings that there is a solution, we will eventually gravitate towards that solution. You're not, all in a death spiral. We all want to commit suicide or something like that. No, we are going to solve the problem. Okay, it's just you need leadership. You need people who are explaining the story, explaining this solution properly, so that people understand where it's coming from. And this is why no one in the climate science community actually talks about this, because they're stuck in the mindset that it will never happen. So they're looking for a solution within the current model so that people don't have to change their lifestyles. And to me, we are in a climate heating system. Okay, I started off, and this is the gift that my granddaughter brought me. Okay, when she was born, I thought that we were the only species that doesn't belong on Earth. If we take human beings out, the planet will be perfectly fine. So we are the only species that doesn't belong in a system that to me was otherwise perfect. Nature to me is a perfect system design. Okay? Every animal just lives and the planet thrives, right? Every animal is contributing their part. And I thought we were the only species that is not contributing its part. Okay? Then I saw Earthlings, the movie Earthlings, and I saw that utter ugliness of humanity, okay, and what we do to animals. I saw the depravity with which we treat animals in these slaughterhouses and so on. So I was thinking we are the only species that doesn't belong on Earth. Take us out and we'll be fine. The planet will be fine. And then when my granddaughter was born, my granddaughter is half Indian, 1/4 African American, and 1/4 American Indian. So when I held her in my arms for the first time, I thought I was holding humanity in my arms because I saw all continents in her. I saw all of humanity in her. And she is incredibly beautiful. Okay, I have to say that. So she showed me the beauty of humanity. Okay? And then she looked at me and she smiled. And it was as if she was reading my thoughts. And as if she was telling me, what do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am. Look at me, right? And you haven't understood me yet. So I immediately realized that I need to look at the entire picture again from a different perspective, that we do belong exactly as we are, and that we are not telling the right story. So I looked back and I looked at all of the climate literature from that perspective, that we are doing something that nature wants. And it turned out that all along, it was staring at me in the face. We have been heating the climate all along for 10,000 years. And nature wanted us to heat the climate because she doesn't want to go back to another ice age again. So that's the story I'm telling now. Okay, so we prevented an ice age from happening. And in the process, now we have increased the temperature by 1 degree Celsius, 1.1 degrees Celsius. And now she's waking us up saying, no more. You can now start cooling it and restoring the ecosystems of the planet. When you restore the ecosystems of the planet and you bring back the animals, you will still have all the fossil fuel CO2 in the atmosphere, and therefore the Earth will not go back to another ice age. So we have managed to do what we set out to do, which is to create a thermostat for the planet. We are the thermostat species. We have a responsibility to other species. So we are not the bosses of the other species. We are actually servants of the ecosystem. So that's the story I tell now, in which we all belong exactly as we are.
So everything you say, of course, makes great sense. But unfortunately, as you know, probably as we speak, tropical rainforest is still being destroyed.
Mm.
People are still eating meat, and the projections are it's going to be even increasing. And projections, I don't know if the saying, I'm here now in Israel, and it's saying this summer we could have 2 or 3 periods for a few days each, which could be as much as 49 degrees Celsius, 120 degrees
Mm.
Fahrenheit. And
Mm.
oceans are rising. So glad to see your optimism, but how do we break through and make change? Because as we're speaking, we're going in the wrong direction, and we might put it, we're eating ourselves to extinction. And
Right.
people somehow they hear the message and all. So have you found, again, fortunately, as you know, the young people seem to be getting the message, and thank God with Greta Thunberg and a lot of young people. But I'm here in a retirement village, and every single day they serve meat and chicken and fish, etc., etc. And I've tried to get the message out, but the good news, they all tell me they have children, grandchildren, vegetarian, vegan. So what more can we do to make really make the change to get people to realize that animal-based agriculture is the main cause? And one of the factors, as you probably know, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has reached 410, 420 parts per million, way over the 50 parts per million that the climate experts think is like a threshold for climate sustainability. And it's been increasing 2 or 3 parts per million per year. So how do we break through all this and make the changes that you're working so hard to get to happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not easy, but at the same time, I say you have to, any birth is not easy. Any transformation is not easy. But it's worth doing. So it's absolutely worth doing. And in any difficult task like this, you focus on the next step and the next step and the next step. You don't, like I imagine that you're climbing up a mountain and you can see the peak that you're trying to reach, right? And you're walking on this ledge. You don't want someone behind you telling you, hey, if you fall this way, you're going to break 10 legs. And I mean, your leg and your arm. If you fall this way, you're going to break your head. I mean, you don't want that, right? You want people to be focusing on what is the next step? What's the next step? And how do we help each other get to the next step and so on? And I want to surround myself with people like that. Okay, so that we keep focusing on the system that we need to create. I say we are not done yet. We have created small examples like Sadhana Forest in India, which was created by a Jewish couple who came from Israel, who took 70 acres of barren land and turned that into a forest, the original forest that used to be there. So the Aviram and Yorit Rosen, who did that, and their children are there now, they are all there. And so they've created this example on the ground that it can be done. And that's 70 acres. Now let's do 7,000 acres. Okay, let's build a city as opposed to just a small, community. Let's build a city whose purpose is to restore the ecosystems of the planet. How would you create a city like that? So that's a different way of doing urban infrastructure. It's a different way of organizing ourselves. So I see this as a systems engineering problem. And how do you create these new systems to replace the old systems? So I wrote a book about my granddaughter because not only did she wake me up when she was born, she actually led me by the hand and showed me how to do things. And I didn't realize that that's what she was doing when she was doing it. But now when I look back, and I wrote 12 stories about her in the book called The Pinky Promise, I realized that's what she was showing me. The lessons were there. So I actually wrote a preface for the book explaining how the 12 chapters of the book are the 12 steps of a transformation program. It's like any AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is how do you give up your current habits and start creating new habits that are aligned with health as opposed to destruction, which is what's happening now. Because it's not people's fault. The system is designed to persuade you to do things that heat the climate. Okay? The system is designed like that. The game of money is the foundational game that we all play. And it's a game of scarcity. It's a game of extraction. So it's a game of competition, win or lose. And it is driving the climate heating system, the game of money. The rules of the game. It's not the money itself, it's the rules of the money game. Who can create money? How is money created? These rules are designed for a climate heating civilization. And I can show that, So then I can say, how do you create a new game, a game in which the rules are set up for a climate healing civilization? Well, money should not be flowing from the top down, and it should not be something that you grab and hold on to. Okay? Because that is the old climate heating model. Money should be something that flows from the bottom up, and if you hold on to it, it should decline. So meaning it is designed to flow. It needs to flow. So you create a new game like that in which people feel like they are, it's playing an infinite game as opposed to a finite game. So if you know the theory of games, the current money game is a finite game. It's a game of winners and losers. Okay. The object of a finite game is to win the game. Whereas the object of an infinite game is to continue the game forever. Okay. And the players come in and out of the game. And the purpose of the game is to continue the game forever, which is what sustainability is about. Sustainability is about playing infinite games. Whereas the current model is heating is about playing finite games. This is why all the games we play, whether we play soccer or basketball or football or whatever, it's all finite games. There's one winner at the end and all the rest are losers. And my granddaughter pointed out to me that is a horrible game to play. She didn't like finite games at all. She wanted to just play. When she was 3 or 4 years old, that's what she wanted to do. And so she would make up her own rules so that we can just keep playing. So she would tell me, Grandpa, you're too close to the end, so come down that ladder. Instead of the chutes and ladders, instead of going up a ladder, I'm coming down a ladder. And then she would go up a chute sometimes, So it's like she was making up the rules as she went along. And that's what we are called to do now. We have to be creative and create new rules and new games that allow us to transform and make it easy for people to transform.
Right. Sounds good. Maria, what specific things are you doing now to get the message out, the super message, and one that can't be disagreed with? So what are some specific things you're doing to get that message out to as wide an audience as possible?
The book I wrote, it's a short book. It's called The Pinky Promise. It just got published on Amazon in January. And I want to do a tour with the book and actually talk to students, talk to schools and universities about the transformation of the games and the stories we tell. So it's the games we play and the stories we tell. And so these two are important. This is how we bring we create a worldview. This is how we coordinate our actions among millions and billions of us. So I want to do a tour of the world with that book. And basically it's a simple book. It's about 70 pages. It's nothing complicated because I try to write complex books like, books that are based on science, and they get to be complex, right? It's not that complicated to understand what is the right thing to do, and how we can do it, how we can pull this off, And so that's what I want to do. Also, I want to create a documentary or something or a storytelling, some kind of movie that would spread this word. So it could be that we get people to come with me and who can videotape what's going on and get some interactions or something like that. That could become a documentary that we can put on YouTube and spread the word. So it's ultimately education. It's education, education, education. That's the number one thing we need to do.
Well, okay, so well, I want to commend you tremendously. I just wish there were many, many more like you, because this is the most critical issue, the greatest environmental issue, political issue, religious, moral, etc.
Right.
So super, and I've been inspired by your efforts. I wish you much continued success. So I wonder, just before I call it quits, do you have any final thoughts, maybe some points that you'd like to bring out that my questions did not elicit? Any final thoughts?
I actually want to commend you for coming up with the term, the vegan revolution. I use that a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think you are right on. And to me, the vegan revolution is the greatest transformation in human history. It is greater than the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the scientific revolution, the communications revolution, you name it. It is bigger than anything else that has ever happened in human history, including the discovery of fire, because it is about coming home to who we really are, because we have compassion in our hearts. And that is, to me, the vegan revolution. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coining that term so that we can hold on to it, that image of a vegan revolution. And that too, you had that beautiful symbol, a Hebrew symbol that for the we. It goes to both. And,
because that letter, by the way, means I in Hebrew, and that's what we need. We're looking at things, that in the Psalms it says, where there's no vision, the people perish. We need a vision, we need to look at things a little bit differently. Okay, so anyway, I want to thank you very much. We're going to try to get the link out to you, and I'll be spreading it wide, and I hope you will be also. And I say this is one of a series. We've got, thank God, we got people like you and many others like that. Not enough, but so we're going to try to get the word out as much as possible. So I want to thank you very much for taking part and being so eloquent and so right on this, because you've given me that info to try and say that over and over and over. By the way, that expression, I don't know if you're the first to use it, but so important. Everybody knows the expression, the elephant in the room. But now that's that cow in the room that you mentioned so much, that we've got to get that message out, and that in order to have a wonderful world for your granddaughter and for all future generations, we've got to get people to realize that that cow in the room, that there's no way, unfortunately, to avert a climate catastrophe unless there's a major shift toward vegan diets. And thank God, as I said before, that now they have the substitutes and all. And we've got truth, morality, and justice on our side, and we just have to get the word out as much as possible. So thank you again. Look forward to continuing working with you toward a vegan world for your granddaughter and all future generations. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Richard.